What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Logisticalstyles coming at you with another video, and today we're going to talk about upgrades and updates for hardware and for software. That's right YouTube, I said we're going to be talking about updates and upgrades today. And this applies to not just software updates and upgrades, but also equipment updates and upgrades and laptop updates and upgrades. When I say equipment, I mean like DJ mixers and controllers. So you have DJ equipment, DJ software, and computer operating systems and computer hardware. So all those have different levels and different schedules for updates and upgrades. And you have to really think about those now that DJing with laptops has been really going on for about 18 years or so right now. So what was working great in the beginning is now needing updates and upgrades. So what I mean about that is, like, for example, one of the more popular laptops on the Mac side is the between 2010 to 2012, specifically the 2012, because that was the year that was like the last year that they were what made them so special, and that was the fact that they were very upgradable. You could upgrade the memory, you could put as much memory as that laptop could handle in there, even if you didn't buy it with that much memory. You could upgrade the hard drive to a bigger hard drive, and then when technology improved and SSDs became more popular and are more available, you could update your hard drive to an SSD with a large capacity. And then you could also take out the optical bay, the CD drive, and add a second hard drive or SSD in there to really increase your storage. So those are great machines because they had that upgradability going for them. You could really beast out a computer that you bought or got that didn't have the right specs. You could make them yourself. But now, as time has changed or as time has progressed, companies like Apple and other manufacturers as well, even Microsoft included, they have made their computers non-user serviceable. You cannot add memory to them. You can't upgrade the hard drives. What you order or what you buy is what you get and what you're stuck with. And just as a little disclaimer, I work in IT. When I'm not DJing, actually my full-time job is I work in IT. I'm a IT analyst and I work at a law firm, and I've been doing this for probably about 13 years now. And I've worked at several different companies in different environments. Some environments, most of them have been all PC, Microsoft Windows based. And then I've had the opportunity to work at a software developer company where the split was about 50-50 between PCs and Macs. So I had to learn and be proficient with both. I'm actually certified in an older version, Mac 10.11. We'll go over these versions in a little bit, but I do have a background and I do have, some formal education in computer systems. So just getting that out of the way, let's go back into the discussion at hand, and that is about the software updates. So I'm starting with the computers themselves, the hardware, and I'm going to do a lot of this based on Macs because that's what I prefer to work with when I am DJing. Like I say, my daytime job, I do work in a corporate environment, so I'm always around Windows machines. So if there's anything that kind of deviates, I'll try to point it out. But for the most part, it's the same across the board when it comes to your strategy for updating your operating systems, your computer hardware, your Serato software, and your DJ equipment. Let's start with the Macs. The MacBook Pro that you buy, depending on the year, can only work with certain operating systems. As time progresses and operating systems get more complex, the older Macs are no longer able to run that new operating system. So as a result, the software that's run on those operating systems also have to evolve. So the software that is working on the new operating system on the new Mac will not work on an older Mac. So you have all these different versions of laptops, and what's cool about Apple is they go by the years, so it's a little easier to keep up with. When you look at other laptops or other models, you have to look by the model number and the product number, and it becomes a little harder to understand what you have, even though it's not, with Macs, it's not just as simple as what year you have. Sometimes it may be what time of year. Do you have an early 2012 or a late 2013? You know, that type of stuff. But as the MacBooks have progressed, the operating systems that they've been able to deal with have become, you get these windows of opportunity with them. So you have a 2015 MacBook Pro, and that's a notable MacBook Pro because that's the year that they went with the non-replaceable RAM. So that means that 4 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of RAM that you can order or you can see on a computer, it now becomes permanent. Whatever it came with is what it has. So that means that if you buy a MacBook Pro with 8 gigs of RAM and then eventually you start using software that needs more memory, and they tell you you need to have 16 gigs of RAM to run this software, then you're just out of luck because you cannot upgrade the memory on these new computers. And that started around 2015. So that's something you need to keep in mind when you are making a purchase for a laptop. You want to buy a laptop that's going to last you as long as possible. And even on these PCs, because I also use the Microsoft Surface laptop, and it has no user, you can't even open it up. So, you know, these new laptops are getting like that. They don't really want you to replace parts on them, and they do have a shelf life. And you will start finding that DJ hardware also has a shelf life, and DJ software has a shelf life, because as things move on, they will start dropping support for certain hardware. If you look on the Serato DJ forums right now, a lot of the threads are talking about whether or not this piece of hardware will work with the M1 chip from Apple, or will it work with Big Sur, or will it work with Windows 11, or there's a really big one going on right now, and it's talking about the hardware that was dropped from the latest Serato update back in what is this? I think December, right around December 6th, they dropped Serato DJ Pro 2.5.8. And yes, I do have notes, so I'm jumping around. I did a little research for this, so I want to give as much correct information as possible. But December 6th, Serato 2.5.8 was dropped, and that discontinued a lot of RAIN hardware. It discontinued a lot of stuff that was really popular, like the RAIN 62, the RAIN SL boxes, the SL2, 3, 4, those boxes were dropped. And if you are familiar with Serato and RAIN's, history, the SL boxes is what got a lot of DJs into using Serato, because we were able to use our mixers, our analog mixers, and hook up a interface that allowed us to have digital vinyl system, a DVS. So it's basically like Serato is, or RAIN. We're still trying to figure out who is the culprit in this, or maybe it's just both of them. But either way, suddenly this hardware is no longer compatible with the newer version of the software. So that's something you really have to think about. If you want to hold on to your legacy older gear, like a RAIN 62, which was a great mixer, very popular mixer, cost a lot of money when it came out, still cost a little bit, even though the price is dropping because of the lack of support from Serato. So that hardware is really just something you have to think about. If you're going to are you going to spend $1,500 to $2,000 on a mixer that's going to have a shelf life, and you don't know when it's going to die, because the next update, and it's not going to die. Let's take that back. Let's bring it back a little bit. The hardware and the software isn't dying, it's losing support, and you can't upgrade it at some point. So you're going to be stuck at a certain level of functionality. if you want to continue to use this older hardware, you have to be stuck with older software, which might also mean older operating systems, and quite possibly, if you want to get drastic, an older laptop. It's very possible to find a semi-recent laptop that can run a semi-recent version of the operating system that can run this version of the DJ software that you need. But something that a lot of DJs are coming across, and it's going to happen even more now that some new equipment is coming out, but the newer equipment that's coming out is not being made to work on older operating systems. It's not being made to work on older versions of software. That's why when you have a problem with your software or your hardware, the first thing they tell you is download the latest version. They always tell you that from a tech support angle. They're always going to tell you download the latest version, and we'll go from there. So if you want to have the latest version of the software, then you need to have your operating system somewhat current. I'm seeing examples of friends of mine, even other DJs out there, buying some new gear, and it's not even some fancy high-end gear, but it's like something for like Serato Intro or Serato Lite or whatever, but they can't use it because their operating system is old. Their DJs using Yosemite or even Mavericks. Really, I think if you're using software named after a big cat like Jaguar or Mountain Lion, you're really, really far behind. And the only reason I could see you wanting to keep using that is if you had a TTM 57 SL that you wanted to just continue to use and use it with Scratch Live, which is an older discontinued version of the Serato software. So you see how things progress. So now what's really cool is you can go to the Serato website and you can look at, they have a Serato archives. You can look at and you can download every version after Serato Scratch Live. They don't have Scratch Live listed, but they have Serato 1.0. Then it goes all the way up to the current version of Serato 2.5.8. But if you go there, you can see all the release notes that tell you what the update was. It'll tell you when it was released, and it tells you what was improved, what was fixed, what was added, what was addressed with this update. So you can see that for every single update, and you can download it and install it. So maybe you do have an older laptop and you have to have Serato DJ 2.1, so or Serato DJ Pro 2.1, because there is a difference. That's what when I said it stopped at Scratch Live, it starts at Serato DJ, which is really a totally different product than Scratch Live. It looks the same, it looks similar, not the same, it looks similar, and it has similar functions, but Serato DJ was a new product that was an improvement for some people. Other people swear by Scratch Live and they stick with that. But from Serato DJ, there were several updates, and then eventually it became Serato DJ Pro. And that's when things really changed. And I think the big change from Scratch Live to Serato DJ and then DJ Pro was the inclusion and takeover of controllers. And then when the controllers started taking over, a lot of the software started to cater to the controllers or the options and features that were available, because you could add so many more buttons and so many more knobs and controls to the surface of a controller, and then mixers got bigger and they added those features as well. So that was like the evolution of coming from Scratch Live, which was just all about turntable emulation and a digital vinyl solution, and now it's more about the software itself and the control you can have over the music. But as the Serato software has evolved, it has dropped support for operating systems. So if you start at Serato DJ 1.0, it became Serato DJ and it switched over from Scratch Live at the 1.0 version, and it used OS X 10.6.8, and that was the oldest version that was available, and that was probably named after some big cat, mountain lion or whatever, leopard, jaguar, one of those versions. But then the next big evolution was Serato 2.0, and that's when it became Serato DJ Pro. Now, between 2.0 and 1.0, there were some minor upgrades and some updates that came out, but 2.0 was the big one because it was that with the name change, and it became Serato DJ Pro, and this is when it was the oldest operating system that you can run with this software. This version of the software was El Capitan. So y'all remember El Capitan? It was kind of problematic at first when it came out. It was a big to do about the issues people were having. If you look in the archives on the Serato forum, you'll see that there were issues with El Capitan. Next up, there was 2.1, which added support for Mojave, and then by this time, Sierra is the oldest operating system that is supported by Serato 2.1. Then 2.3 came out, and then suddenly Catalina support, that was a big operating system drop. Sierra was the oldest operating system supported for 2.3. And then 2.5. 2.5 was a big one because that was April of 2021 last year, and they finally gave us support for the M1 chips because Apple made that big shift with their laptops. The M1 and Big Sur was the operating system at the time, and it took a while. It took longer than expected for Serato and other DJ programs as well. Serato wasn't the only one, but other programs had a hard time getting, or it seemed it took them a longer time to get official support for those softwares or that operating system and that hardware. So you see how my original statement goes. It's not just one of these things you have to be worried about. You have to worry about now it's what chip is on your laptop. It's not just what year you have, but what chip you have. Do you have an M1? You have an M1 Pro, M1 Max? Is that supported? Are you on Big Sur? Are you on Monterey? And those things you have to think about. The software companies, they do try to, when I'm talking about software, I mean like Serato and Virtual DJ and Tractor and Rekordbox, they try to be on point or up to date with the operating systems, but they only get but so much communication from the operating system makers such as Microsoft and Apple. So they can only work with what they're given and then the resources they have to develop. So you have to think about, if you buy that new piece of gear, is it supported by the equipment you have already, the software, the hardware, the laptop? Does that support the gear that you're looking to buy? And if you're looking to also hold on to older gear, is that older gear still going to be able to be used? Because a lot of equipment has become obsolete. You can go to the Serato website and you can see a list of the equipment that's no longer available. It's mostly Rain. It's a lot of Rain stuff, some Denon stuff, and some stuff seemed like it was really simple, and it's weird that they even dropped support for it, like the Denon DN 1000 controller. It's not even a full DJ controller, it's an official Serato accessory that allows you to just have cue points and library control, but they dropped support for that as well. But they do also at least tell you what is the best operating system for you to use that older gear on. So a lot of the Rain stuff, it looks like 2.5.5 is where you should really stay. And with you staying at 2.5.5, you have to look at what the operating systems and hardware requirements for that version are, and just keep it. You're going to be like kind of locked in a time capsule as far as your equipment is right there. If you decide you want to get newer gear, then eventually that's going to force you to have to get either a newer laptop or update your operating system at least. So think about that type of stuff. There's a lot to look at, but the best places for you, or the best resources for you to get your information from, I would start with the equipment that you're going to buy or the equipment that you're using. Go to the manufacturer's website and you can see what the minimum requirements are as far as hardware and software. And then from there, you can make a decision. Do you have that? If you do, cool. Then go to the software you want to use. You want to be able to use the latest version of it if possible. So from there, you might have to do some digging in to the release notes, the archives, where you can see the release notes and you can see what release of Serato opened up support for this piece of equipment. And you have to be specific about the equipment, because the MK1 is different than an MK2. I had a Serato, I had a Rain 12 first. I had it for about a year, and then when the Rain 12 MK2 came out, I bought it and it showed up, and I unhooked it and plugged it up, and it did not work. I had to update my Serato to get the version that had support for the MK2. Even though I already had support for the MK1, the MK2 did not work at all until I got that latest version of Serato. And the same thing happened when I bought my Newmark Scratch and when I bought my Rain 70. Every time I bought a new piece of equipment, I usually had to upgrade my version of Serato. But my problem that I'm coming up on is I have a late 2013 MacBook Pro. So I'm already at a point where I cannot go any higher than Monterey, and I don't believe I can get 2.5.8 put on. I have to look, but I'll also talk about another consideration. Are you an iTunes user? If you use iTunes, there's a version of operating system for Macs that you can't go past, because I don't trust it, even though they just broke it up. iTunes, they broke it up from just music and TV and videos all at once. You know, they made separate Apple Music, Apple TV, Apple Movies, or whatever. I prefer to work with iTunes. I prefer for my iTunes library to show up in Serato, and I build my crates off of what's available there. I may even make a playlist in iTunes and then use that through Serato. But if I want to continue to do that, I have to stop. I cannot go up to Catalina. Catalina, I believe, is where they removed iTunes. So for me, the best move right now, since I'm on High Sierra, is maybe go to Mojave. But I'm not even sure if it's going to be worth it, if I'm going to gain anything by that. So those are kind of things you have to think about when you want to upgrade or you want to get that new piece of equipment. I hope I didn't get too long-winded and go too far into it, but this is something that I think is really important to talk about and to think about, because we're no longer in the early stages of digital DJing, and where you just needed a computer that had enough RAM and enough memory and you could be off to go, or a good processor and you're off to go. Now you have to have hardware that can handle it. And another part of the hardware thing that I even mentioned is on these computers, they change the ports. Your HDMI port may go away and may come back. USB-C is taking over. USB-C is a really great and a very, very functional port that allows you to do a whole lot with one port. I mean, I can hook up on my Surface laptop, I can hook up from one single USB-C port, I can hook up an audio interface, a webcam, and Ethernet port, and there's one more thing I had hooked up by USB, but all that running at the same time from one port. So that is really cool about USB-C, and it is taking over, but that's going to require you to also think about your cables. Now you got to get cables that go from USB-C to USB-A or you know, all these different things, all these different connections. And the best way to do it is to be using as few dongles as possible, get a straight through cable, but you got to make do with what you can find. But that's things to think about. things to consider when you are updating, upgrading, and chasing after all this new equipment. Things to think about when you want to try to get a new feature that you've heard so much about and you can't figure out why it's not on your version of Serato. You might need to update. Well, before you do that update, make sure you can even do it. Make sure it won't break something else. Make sure it won't cause you to lose support for the piece of equipment you're trying to use this feature with. So look into it. And the best thing I can say is read up on those 4 categories. Those are the main things: your laptop hardware, the operating system, the version of Serato that you're running, and the equipment that you're using, because it uses drivers and firmware updates. So you got to have all those 4 categories to consider and think about it. And the best place to get that information, the correct information, not just opinions, go to the manufacturer's website, go to the Serato website, go to the Apple website, go to the Microsoft website, go to Rain, Pioneer. They all will give you that information and tell you what the requirements are. And my last piece of advice is don't go for the minimum specs. Don't go for the minimum requirements. Get more than you need. You want to be able to future-proof your computer or your system so you don't have to worry about getting a computer every 3 years. You want to be able to try to get that longevity out of them, because like I said, the 2012 MacBook Pro, people are still out there using them 10 years later. So now, with all that said and done, I'm about to sign out. Thank you for continuing to watch. Thank you for checking out the videos. I hope they're informative, give you something to think about, and keep on the lookout because we got new stuff coming. Trying to be more frequent with the videos, and I hope it's showing. I think we're getting up to the level of at least 1 a week right now. Got some new environments to shoot in, got some new gear to look at, new software to look at, all coming up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.